Mm. So, it's the 20th of May, 2020. My ass is still furloughed. I'm out for my morning walk. Yeah. And yeah, I've come to the end of a long chapter of the last year. So about this time last year, I was on my lunch break at work, sitting outside, sorting through my bag, and all of a sudden, a police officer turns up. In fact, not one police officer, but four police officers. At least 3 of them armed with tasers, standing around me while I'm sitting down in the car park of the station. And they ask me what I'm doing. And I say, having my lunch. And then I said to them, everybody needs to be calm, and I'm not going to move until you instruct me to, and if I am going to move, I'll let you know. And I light up a cigarette. And then they want to search my bag. So I give them my bag, and I was under the impression that everything I was carrying was legal. And we'll get to that. So they go through my whole bag, and I've forgotten that in my first aid kit there's a knife that isn't locking. The main blade is under 3 inches long. As far as I'm aware, that's legal. I've got 2 multi-tools. They start asking me if there's anything else I should be aware of. And then I remember there's a small pack of lockpicks in the pencil case. And I tell them that I've pre-authorised that with my manager just in case we need to get into something and we haven't got the keys. Yeah. And they proceed to freak out a little bit, even though, as far as I'm aware, the blades are non-locking, but they seem very, very stressed about it. And they, after about 10 minutes of searching through my bag, whereupon they missed a few things, they confiscate a whole bunch of shit off me and say they'll be in touch. So from me, they took 2 little pairs of scissors. One was in a first aid kit, one of them was in my sewing kit. So you can imagine how small the scissors are. 1 3-inch non-locking blade electrician's knife that they really lose their shit about. 2 little multi-tools with 1.5-inch non-locking blades on them. Again, these were spread around in my kit. You know, it wasn't like they were all in my pocket. And there. And then they see a thing, which still amazes me to this day. They see one of those small versions of one of those snap-off blade cloth knives. So it's not the size that's about the same size as a Stanley blade, it's the one size down from that tiny thing. And if anybody's ever used one, you'll know that it's not a weapon by any description. Nobody would describe it as a weapon, because it doesn't lock if you've ever used one, and the blade's too thin, and the usable length of blade is about 1 centimetre. So that had been in my kit for ages. Things cost about 10 pence, about 20 cents. You know, they're designed to be disposable, the blades are designed to snap off. But we'll come back to that. So then, 2 months later, I finally get summoned to the British Transport Police headquarters at Manchester Station, and we go into an interview room. It was about the size of a store cupboard. We sit down, and they proceed to record my interview on C60 cassettes. So I have a nice conversation with people. With this guy for about an hour, after which he still doesn't tell me which things they're cross about. So that's always a bit of a climb. So yeah, I really need to get into shape. So I have this hour-long conversation where they show me mugshots of the dangerous implements, although now they're down to the electrician's knife and the snap-off blade knife. They realise that it's not unreasonable for people to carry a small pair of scissors with them, or a mini multi-tool, or any one of those things, and they're down to these two. Now, I've read and reread the law since, and it still says a 3-inch folding non-locking blade or less is the maximum that they want you to carry. So, it doesn't even at this point say whether I'm going to get prosecuted, but it's clear that the officer in question, you know, is not too aware of what's prosecutable, which in a police officer is real weird. So I'm already at this stage thinking that this is just going to go away. It's just random police harassment. So yeah, I have this conversation. I ask him at the end of it, so what's the deal? Are you going to prosecute me? Or, you know, or what? Doesn't know. And then about 2 months after that, after I go home, I still haven't received my stuff back. No contact's been made. I just get a letter saying, appear here at this magistrate's court. You know, you're being prosecuted under the, you know, whatever knife crime act it was. So I turn up, I have a look at the law again. I'm not in a position where I can afford to hire a solicitor to give me any advice prior to the day, so I turn up and figure this is the sort of thing where it's down to the judge. But when I get there, I'm assigned a duty solicitor who pretty much tells me that there's no wiggle room on this. If I had the item, they've got body cam footage, you know, they've run it up the flagpole, it contravenes, you know, and it turns out they're talking about the snap-off blade knife. They've already discounted the folding electrician's knife because it's street legal, and we'll come back to that. And yeah. So, we're now talking about the snap-off blade knife. I have a word with the duty solicitor, and she informs me I can't get out of it, and that if I plead not guilty, essentially it will go to a Crown Court, where, because I've pled not guilty in order to clarify the law, if I lose, I'll get actual prison time. So I go in there and I plead not guilty. I plead guilty, rather, which really pisses off the prosecution. So they start trying to list all the other things that aren't on the prosecution notes that I had with me to try and defame my character, and we'll come back to that. So yeah, so the fact that I've never been in front of a judge before, you know, is on my side. The fact that I'm nearly 50 is on my side. This is about, I think it's October. It's like the 17th of October. Or is it? Anyway, so finally getting there. I turn up. It's a bloody nightmare to get into Manchester for 9:30 And then I'm not called till like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, like I'm stuck there for hours. And they finally decide, you know, but when I see the duty solicitor basically says, you know what, you know, you are guilty of this. It does contravene the thing. There is no provision for a snap-off blade or a locking mechanism that doesn't actually work. Yeah. And that I am guilty of contravening the having a sharp object that contravenes the knife code in a public place. So I plead guilty, and then they tell me to come back for sentencing a few weeks later. So I go back, and again, you know, there's an attempt to mention all the other things I had, but since they weren't included on the prosecution papers, because they're irrelevant, the judge shuts that down. You know, they've seen the body camera footage, they've listened to the interview. You know, they agree with me. I wasn't carrying anything that was to be used as a weapon. It's pretty shitty weapons. You know, they agree with me. In my head, I agree not to tell them about all the other super dangerous shit I've got at home. It's just not worth it. It's not worth the extra grief. So, they go, you know, before this, a court officer comes out and then harangues me for not hiring a solicitor, despite the fact and then I tell him I couldn't afford one. And he goes, oh, you could be in a lot of trouble, type shit. You know, I hadn't seriously contemplated going to jail. The jails are overcrowded. They're looking for violent people to put in them. You know, I think the judge has already seen my point of view, realises there's nothing I can do about it. Yeah, so eventually they come back and hand me a 6-month suspended sentence, a sentence of 12 weeks, which is the most they can, you know, reduce it by. I did some research online. The lowest sentence you could get, you know, if you were carrying a knife and you committed a crime with it, the fact that you were carrying a knife would have earned you a minimum of 12 weeks in jail. So 3 months. So yeah, I mean, prior to that, just after the conviction visit, which was about 3 weeks earlier, the probation service sits down with me, which is very nice of them. They made an appointment for me almost immediately after my first court appearance, and the guy basically agrees with me. He says, yeah, no, I know a lot of people that do bushcraft. You know, this is kind of rubbish. So yeah, I'll sit down here for a little bit. So yeah, to recap, because I don't think I'm explaining this all that well. So, May 2019, a whole bunch of stuff's confiscated off me. You know, June, July time, I go in for an interview. The police still refuse to tell me where I was breaking the law and why they're going to prosecute me. Late October, early November 2019, I go to court. I am advised by the solicitor to plead guilty because, you know, they've got body cam footage. They've essentially got me on tape saying, yep, that's what I had. You know, so, you know, the judge makes it very clear that the Crown Prosecution Service, acting on behalf of British Transport Police, are prosecuting me for the, you know, snap-off blade knife. So, after I've pled guilty, because I don't really see that there's an option, you know, I don't really see that there's any mitigating circumstances that can make any difference at this point. Yeah. So yeah, after this guilty plea, I get told to come back in a bunch of weeks to face, you know, whatever they're going to sentence me with. So they'll send people off and figure it out. So in the meantime, you've got to speak to the parole board, in case you go to prison, for any background, any mitigating circumstances, anything that you feel may be useful, and what your lifestyle's like, so they can decide whether any sentencing is fair or reasonable given how you live. And this is where my lifestyle becomes Mr. Advantage. So one, I'm full-term employed. I haven't committed any previous crimes, and judges don't really like locking up people for non-violent crimes prior to that. So yeah, so there's a thing. You know, two, I work really odd hours, so I can't be ordered to be have a curfew, and because I work 6 days a week, I can't really be asked to do community service. You know, they know that if they put me in jail for this really stupid thing, where nobody got hurt and only one police officer was mildly offended, then yeah, there's going to be one less taxpayer in the world. So that really works out for me. You know, also, if you are going to court, wear a suit. You know, don't turn up in tracksuit bottoms. You know, there's nobody there. No, none of the accused were in suits. So yeah, so I go to the court, and the parole guy realises that, you know, they're going to have to fine me, but also, therefore, I also work on minimum wage, so that's kind of messed up. So yeah, so I'm a minimum wage dude that works nights and works 6 days a week. Kind of screws up, you know, a lot of the more common punishments like curfews and shit like that, or putting an anklet on you and things. So we fill in this big long form, and the parole guy goes, I wouldn't worry about it, you're looking at a suspended sentence, in my experience. So I go home, and then I'm back in court like four weeks later, again in a suit. Always wear a suit, you know, at least show that you actually, you know, even if you don't, that you respect, you know, the system of law. And so I go in, and they say, you know, they do the who are you and all that sort of gubbins, and then they go, right, you were, you know, found guilty, or you pled guilty on this date to having this thing on you. And the judge looks at me like, oh, this is bollocks. You know, the Crown Prosecution Service tried to chime in with how dangerous a person that the police officer thought I were, and the judge gives her an oh really look, and basically silences, you know, they sort of do this, you know, you had the opportunity at, you know, whether it was a guilty or non-guilty, guy pled guilty to the thing that you demanded, we're done. And they go away and deliberate and come out, and if you ever appear in court and you're not, you know, you're not the good guy as far as they're concerned, you have to pay court costs, which is 80 quid, so like $110 for, you know, all the police time and the paperwork and all that sort of gubbins. You know you live in a capitalist system when, you know, you get charged for the bullets. So yeah, and then they give me a 12-week sentence, suspended for 6 months, charge me court costs, and then, in a massive stroke of irony, they demand that I pay a fine into the victim compensation fund of 120 quid. So I end up paying like 200 quid, you know, for the privilege of somebody taking my shit off me. And they order the offending weapon to be destroyed type thing, which basically means a 10-cent craft knife gets, you know, taken home by whatever police officer quite fancies it. And I'm on probation for 6 months, which has just ended, which is why I thought I'd do that. It has ended. So yeah, so on the 18th, so day before yesterday, you know, my suspended sentence was up. But, you know, I didn't really feel like talking about it on Monday, and yesterday I just could not get motivated to do anything really, because I was waiting for the postie, and I got sucked into that waiting for the postie thing. So today, this is like, you know, a year on, you know, one of those little snap-off bladed knives caused all that hassle. And then, like last week, the police came back and hand-delivered, like physically brought them to me, hand-delivered all the stuff that they confiscated. So I got, you know, my little lockpick set, one of those little credit card lockpick sets came back. Got 2 pairs of scissors, 2 multi-tools, and my folding electrician knife that freaked them all out so much. So yeah. So that's all over now, but what a complete waste of time. So some of you on here know that I got, you know, and I wasn't even arrested. But the reason I'm talking to you about it is that, you know, could be viewed as a negative experience. You know, technically now I've got a criminal record, although no employer's ever going to have a problem with it because it's bullshit. You know, the judge didn't have a problem with it because it's bullshit. You know, it's technically illegal. You know, and there's lots of cases of things being technically illegal, but no one was hurt. You know, you wouldn't be able to prosecute even if you know, all that easily or for all that much time. You know, it's just a bullshit thing. You know, it's keeping the officers of the court employed. So, you know, good on, you know, the duty solicitor making sure I didn't get railroaded. You know, that was a cool thing. Good on the probation guy, good on the judge. A bit of a fail on the Crown Prosecution Services lawyer for that case. I'm sure you can look it up if you really wanted to. It's a matter of public record. And like a real fail on behalf of the police, who felt that to stop someone from carrying one of these snap-off bladed knives, you needed 4 police armed with tasers. That tells you something about the fear level that police are dealing with on a daily basis. And I really, you know, that must be awful. I really do feel for the police. And I really feel for the fact that the same guy had to come back and drop off all my stuff and have a conversation with me. And of course, I wasn't going to let him in my house. That's not how this works. We're not friends. You could have just thought about that, or you could have even known the law and thought, no, fuck it. I'll confiscate the thing that actually does break the law and say, look, dude, don't do it again. That'd have been far more effective. I mean, wasn't even stuff I carry habitually. I mean, I habitually carry the little multi-tools. You know, I habitually carry a pair of scissors, but those aren't illegal, you know, in my first aid kit. I mean, theoretically, I could just jam that all back in a bag, write down the case number, and say, this, dear officer of the law, this, you know, all this stuff is legal, as proven in case number, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I consider it to be a vindication of what I was carrying, aside of the snap-off blade knife. So I should be able to carry them all the time because I've paid for the privilege. It cost me 200 quid. You know, and 6 months of, you know, paying attention to not getting arrested for anything. So yeah. So that's all over now, but I'm treating it as a positive experience because you can. You can see it as a kind of like, right, this focused me down quite significantly. This made me think about, you know, the forces of law and order at play in our world. So yeah, make of that what you will. I treat it as a very cheap understanding the law course, you know, like a legal foundation course, if you wanted to know a little bit more about the law and how it works. Because 200 quid's pretty cheap, even if you did, you know, if you were going to have someone, you were going to, like, you know, actually go to these places, actually sit in on a magistrate's court's trial, you know, then see all the paperwork and how it goes thing, experience the timeline, you know, get a real first-person view of our legal system. 200 quid's cheap. You know. Fortunately, I earn much better money at, you know, washing dishes than people think. I work less hours than people think. So this perception of you're a nobody and you have no money and you have no status, we're not exactly bringing you down. You know, I mean, the prison experience would have been cool. You know, but it's a very interesting thing. I weren't never going to go to prison. They just wanted to see how far they could make my life difficult. And possibly some of that is because I was pretty relaxed for most of the time when I was being interviewed or asked questions. I remained courteous and civil and chilled out, which really pissed off the police. And it also really pissed off the police officer in question when he came back and dropped off my stuff. And there's a reasonable chance that he watches this YouTube channel. He's aware of it. You know, the guy who did my probation is aware of it. Now, if you're out there, probation guy, and I can't remember, I want to say Andrew, but I could well be massively wrong. So, yeah, so if you're out there and you now watch Urban Agoge, you know, like, good on you. You know, you bailed me out of a really hard thing. I'd love to know if you do. But yeah, so it was real weird and real interesting. So yeah, it is. You know, it is what it is. I mean, you know, you can take 2 lessons off this. You can take the, you Was it better to be prepared for all those years for all sorts of different things and then only get hassled the once? That's also a pretty fortunate thing. Would it, you know, I've now technically got a criminal record, but, you know, and they tried to sort of make out that this was some terrible thing, you know. But, you know, I've never bumped into anybody that thinks it's a reasonable collar. You know, I've talked to a few people about it. And there are some people that I didn't want to talk about, you know. There are a few people in my family that subscribe to this channel. It has to be said, you probably didn't get told, mostly because I didn't want you to worry, because I didn't think it was a thing to worry about. I didn't want people to freak out. So, you know, now it's a matter of my public record. It was a bullshit charge, you know, made by cowardly people that were pissed off that I wasn't frightened of them. You know, essentially the system tried to bully me, and it wasn't able to in this case. You know, could have gone to prison if they'd been having a bad day. Could have been all sorts of things. Could have been loads of stuff. But there again, I could have been knocked over by a car on the way here to record this video. It's all it could have been. Really all that you get. It's a bit like, you know, if you injure yourself and you've got a scar. You could have died. You could have bled out. But you didn't. And now you've got a cool scar. Scars are good. You know, obviously some scars are better than others. If you've been amazingly disfigured by an accident, you know, you're going to have a different viewpoint. But I'm talking about like a cut on your arm that turns into a scar, or a nick in your eyebrow. You know that you probably don't want to get hit in the face if that's how you got your nicked eyebrow. You probably don't want to fuck around with knives that you did, but you learned. And that's a valuable experience because it could have been so much worse. I mean, that's one of those real life learning things. You learn, or you do it again and it's even worse. So you learn from it, you value the experience because nothing too terrible happened, and nothing too terrible did. You know, who gives a shit? It was minor. But if you do ever find yourself waiting to see a magistrate or a county judge in the United States or whatever the fuck it is elsewhere in the world, if you do find yourself waiting for that, look at the other people. It's positively Hogarthian. The amount of wild, wacky shit. You know, habitual criminals don't get charged, don't do time for shit. You know, they're just in and out of the court system all the time. You know, and then there's someone like me that's never seen the inside of a magistrate's court is suddenly there, and it's just like, okay, learn everything you can. You know, if you're paying for it, you're going to pay for it. They're going to charge you with something. They're going to try and get money out of you somehow. Get your money's worth. And I'm not saying I recommend it. I mean, it's probably one of those things that, you know, is probably going to be a little bit of a hassle now and again, but, you know, there was no victim. It was not a crime of violence. It was a crime of police annoyance. So, yeah. It's not a very efficient machine, and having seen it, a little bit of it from the inside, I'm aware that it's a really inefficient machine. You know, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't want to work in that environment day in and day out. So, you know. But anyway, I'm free to commit other crimes now without the my brief foray into gang knife crime. You know, being taken into consideration. So yeah, I've been waiting until it was like completely over so I could explain it from my point of view and with my viewpoint on it. But it was interesting. All in all, would I have preferred that, you know, that hadn't happened? Yeah, probably. I'd be 200 quid better off. I probably wouldn't have done anything too smart with 200 quid. You know, now I've got a criminal record. For something like that, where it's just a criminal record of essentially I got prosecuted for being relatively competent and owning tools and carrying those tools, you know, in an environment where occasionally I do need them. Yeah, fair enough. So yeah, it's a bit like falling down a hill and breaking your leg, and it makes you a bit more sensible and aware of walking down that hill again. But, you know, really, even if I had done prison, you know, that would have been a learning experience. And then when I come out, oh, I've got no money because I'm on the dole. However, the government's not about to try and make me homeless, so I've still got a home. It's going to try and take my job off me, so I'll have more time. You know, or I could have got another job, which could have been a better job. All kinds of shit. You can't predict how something that seems negative. So, you know, make absolutely sure that if you do go to court, have something to drink. Don't be dehydrated. Don't be hungry. You know, don't have external forces. And this is a good rule for life. Shut up as many voices of things that aren't right coming into your system. You know, reduce the bandwidth when you've got to deal with something stressful and focus on it. You know, that way you're not being distracted by being hungry or needing to go to the loo or, you know, feeling stressful or alone or angry. Let all that go. And just exist in the moment with as little external information as you possibly can while paying attention to your surroundings. And wear a suit. And there's no point thrashing about at the people that work in that system. They're working in that system. They're not going to change until that system is changed. You can't change one person, expect that changed person to bang around in the system freaking out because it's not fair or sensible. You know, you have to change the system from the top on down. So yeah, it was a good learning experience. You know, now I've got some distance from it. It's a little bit stressful going into court. It's a little bit stressful being arrested and all that shit. Well, not arrested, but, you know, harassed and having my property confiscated. But essentially, it's all good. It all turned out right in the end. Like I kind of, like 80% of me, maybe 90% of me believed it would. Now, I could have gone to prison, but I didn't. So yeah, in another alternate dimension, I did exactly the same things, I made exactly the same choices, but I went to prison and terrible things happened to me. But not this reality. So yeah, it was valuable. It was stressful. I didn't feel like there was much point telling loads of people at the time. It was more a after the fact thing, I'll talk about this. Once I realised what was going down, there really was not too much in the way of hassle. So yeah, I am officially a free man as of Monday. So yeah, so it's all cool. Now I can go and commit other crimes. But yeah, so that's what I wanted to talk about today in the main. I've been having some interesting conversations with other people. We've got some new people in the loop, which is cool. I like having new people in the loop. You know, especially since I know that the newest person to subscribe is a bit of a superstar. I'm not going to blow their cover. But this is your ego boost out there. New person, I know you are. Thank you for subscribing. And yeah. It's, you know, and I've had a lot of chats with that particular person. And maybe at some point in the future I'll tell you why they're a superstar. I mean, they're not famous in ways that anybody outside of us can understand. But yeah, they're a cool person. See, I'm not even gendering the person. So yeah, our magic number of actual subscribers has been achieved. Happy 42 week. Got 42 subscribers, 43 including myself, and I don't count. I've just got it to make sure that the upload notifications go out. Yeah. In other news. Yeah. In other news, my antenna tuner arrived yesterday evening. I plugged it in, I tested it and it's worked. So yeah. So I've got 4 of my 5 E's today. Got a bit of education where I figured out some stuff. That was cool. Played with the ATU, played with my radio again. Couldn't transmit out to Hack Green, which is 40 miles away, but that's more learning. I know that 200 odd watts of RF is going out at the back of the radio. Ideally it's tuned in, and I know it has because I've transmitted once before. So, yay! And yeah, that's my education. I've rewatched a couple of episodes of Stranger Things this morning. It's my entertainment, getting me exercise, expressing myself. So yeah, I just got to go home and improve my environment by a nudge. So I do have some tidying to do. And I'm feeling pretty positive, a little buoyed up. So yeah, I need to try and make the culture first contact video today, which is one of those things that's been hanging over me quite a lot. I just want to explain the culture in a short, 5-minute video or less, so that there's a lock-on point. And I do mean what I said on Monday. It would be nice if we get some ideas out of you people for tags. Got 40 smart people in the room, technically, although only about 10 people are going to watch this, I think. So yeah, so today you got an interesting story. The continuation of an average life, but it was interesting. It was funny when they dropped off all my stuff again, because they dropped it off to my door, and it was the same guy. And he gave me my stuff, and they expected to be let in, and I didn't let them in. Mostly because I was just wearing a dressing gown at the time. So I had a semi-naked man to deal with, and the police don't like that. So yeah, so they gave me back all my stuff and went on their way. And it was good. And I'm enjoying having my little baby multi-tools again. So yeah, I'll stop talking about that now. So yeah, we've got things to do, things to achieve. But I look at the world and I think that, stuff's not good. It'll probably rumble on for the remainder of our lives, so be chill. Things might change. Your experience may be positive or negative, depending on your experience. It's all down to your own mileage, which may vary. So what I'm going to do is I'm looking at it and I think it could be better. I'm looking at it and thinking it might get worse, it might get better, we might get lucky. People may wake up. But in the meantime, how about we all get into this mind space where our hobby is saving the world. Let's take that up as a hobby. Let's have, everybody's got hobbies. Oh, what do you do, Bob? I go fishing. I watch Indy 500. I collect model trains. I do this. I do X. So yeah. So there's that. Wouldn't it be so much more fun at a dinner party to say, when somebody goes, or a gathering of some kind, dinner party, because I haven't been to a dinner party in a long, long time, about 5 years. I'm too old for that shit now. So yeah, so you get this whole, imagine the social scenario. And when people, if you're in a shit job, when people do all this icebreaker stuff with you to get you meshed in with the group think, and they ask you to go and find out an interesting thing about everyone. So, yeah. What are your hobbies? So what do you do when you're not at work, Zach? Because my job does not garner much conversation, because everybody's got a better job than me. I have the most meaningless job, but it's bailed me out several times, including right now. So people tend to look at you a bit odd. And they go, what, so what do you do when you're not doing that? Which, intelligent people do. Sort of like, there's probably a reason. Probably a musician or some shit. And they ask you what your hobby is, and you say, planetary salvation. It's a hobby of mine. Which is all kinds of fun. And it's only a point of view. So, even if the culture doesn't work, we've got a cool new hobby. If you combine the concept of planetary and societal salvation with with the concept of Project Morlock, just playing with being more competent and more useful, and just a better rounded, better educated human. That's enough for a hobby. But also, in the trust in Allah, but tie up your camel thing, you know, just becoming slightly more competent every day, slightly more aware, learning those lessons. So yeah, it's interesting. So, and that's why I think it needs a religion. People just need some black and white answers to stuff. You know? What if everybody on Earth was working on not being a dick? It'd be nice, wouldn't it? Be pretty chill. So yeah, let's focus on getting a few more people on the competence train, and give people an easy, overarching idea of what we're doing, and try and point some of that energy that people have got to changing the world for the better, and start doing it on a more, you know, a more planetary level. You know? Does the general answer work if it's a famous person? Does the answer work if it's a piece of music? Does the answer work if you lead by example? You know? So yeah. You know? Does the answer work if it's a really simple combination of rules? Can you thus avoid dogma? You know, can you wipe out the priest class within your society and have the citizen scientist? You know, or the citizen psychologist? You know, how do we, you know, how would we successfully apply for a job in Starfleet? And the Starfleet thing's kind of interesting because, you know, it was actually a thing in the pagan community years ago when the International Space Station was having a systems failure. The pagans of the world got together, and instead of having a ritual in lots of different languages, what they did was at a certain time of day, all of them sat down and imagined that in the command module of the ISS, Mr. Spock suddenly appears to help them out with their systems issue that was going to kill them. And yeah, they came back well. You know, the system problem got fixed, the ISS is still there. Sadly, Leonard Nimoy is no longer with us, but he wasn't Spock. We weren't thinking Leonard Nimoy, we were thinking Mr. Spock. You know, that was our ghost dance. You know, as a pagan bunch of people. But it happened before, you know, the Sean Kennedy thing. So yeah, what if we could just all coherently imagine things being better? You know, and then maybe we can convince other people to imagine that stuff could be better and people could be nicer to each other. And one of the things that occurred to me this morning was, if you were an alien race and you were just listening to all the news feeds coming off this planet, and you were wondering whether humanity could be sort of invested into this sort of federation thing, they sort of got space travel, they got computers, you know, they're coming round to the realisation that space is big and stuff like that, yada yada yada. However, look at how they treat each other because of minor differences. If they're going to treat people like crap because they've got a different skin tone, or they fall in love with different people to you, or they believe that there's a deity out there somewhere that's different from yours, and based on that they feel it's only right to oppress and kill you, there's no way aliens are going to turn up. Now, they might turn up. I mean, but this is also the same as an AI. An AI is going to extrapolate that humanity doesn't like anything different from itself because it's too stupid to see the wonder and the inherent marvel of someone different to you being able to have a conversation with you. So you could absorb some of their viewpoints and maybe help them, or they could maybe help you. You know? And an AI wouldn't show up. A 1% smarter human being wouldn't announce that they were 1% smarter, would they? Because they'd think, oh, well, sooner or later, you know, the people that aren't as intelligent as me are going to round on me and basically will try and wipe me out because I'm different from them and I see things differently to them. You know, same thing with a God, if there is one. So, yeah. With that, I'll leave you. So, thanks for watching. Do take care. Where am I going? Who's coming with me? And I'll be your host until I die or you find someone better. Take care. I'll see you soon.